Hello and welcome to The Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's film is Commando, the beloved 1985 action thriller that stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as a retired Special Forces colonel who must save his kidnapped daughter from a military warlord hell-bent on revenge. Directed by Mark L. Lester and co-starring Alyssa Milano, Ray Dawn Chong, and Vernon Wells, Commando firmly established Schwarzenegger as an action star of larger-than-life presence and iconic quips that has inspired numerous films since its release in September of 1985. And joining me today to talk about Commando is film journalist Paul Rowlands. Make sure you check out his work at Money Into Light, where you can check out film interviews, essays, and articles. I will have the link for Money Into the Light in my show notes. And Paul, I thank you so very much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
So, Commando, this is a film for me. I remember the first time watching this movie. I have an older brother. He had a video card. He had access to the movies that I couldn't watch, and he used to bring them home all the time. And Commando was one of those films he'd bring home, and it was a seminal movie in my young film watching life because it was like a live action cartoon. It was like I was watching a G.I. Joe movie come to life. And until then, the movie stars that I was used to were your Schwarzeneggers and such. No, it's not Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Sylvester Stallone, and people like that. And then I see Schwarzenegger, and his biceps are bigger, his accent is different. Just everything about him was just bigger and brawner and everything, and he killed more people, and his knife was bigger and anything else. And I just fell in love with this movie and just with Schwarzenegger afterwards. I mean, to me, Stallone's still my favorite Schwarzenegger. I mean, man, the run of movies he had in the 80s to the mid 90s was just
Yeah,
incredible. What
yeah.
about yourself, Paul? Do you remember the first time you watched Commando?
Yeah, so I remember it seems like I always knew who Schwarzenegger was.
Hmm.
And I saw the Conan films. So I was born in like 72. So I saw Conan probably on video like 83, 84. But it's kind of a heady movie, so it kind of just went over my head. But for some reason I got really excited about the Terminator.
Hmm.
And I was obviously too young to see it in the cinema. So I remember like just I used to get this video the magazine it was called because I'm from the UK, and I just remember like writing down the date it was coming out for rental and calling up the video rental shop and saying, "Is it in yet? Is it in yet?" And so I just fell in love with the Terminator and loved the Terminator. And then Rambo came out, and also I obviously knew all about Rocky and stuff because they were some of the first films I saw on VHS.
Yeah.
And then Commando comes along and it's Schwarzenegger's version of Rambo, really, right?
Yeah.
So I just remember thinking, wow, this is going to be amazing. And when I finally got to see Commando on video, I just thought it was just one of the most entertaining films ever made. And I'm a huge James Bond fan as well. So I appreciated the humor to the movie.
Hmm.
And it's just been like the gift that keeps on giving. I just return to it all the time. And I just think it's pure joy from start to finish.
I watched it again recently so I can just like get, prepare for this interview. And I forgot certain things in the movie that that have gone, sometimes times are fun, all right? Some things just kind of are
Yeah.
left behind. And there's certain scenes and movies and lines in the film that I kind of forgot about. And it took me back to what I loved about this film in the first place. A lot of it comes down to Schwarzenegger himself. I mean, he's the lead actor here. This is like you talked about Conan, you talked about
Mm.
Terminator. He did Red Sonja as well, which didn't do so well. It just came out before Commando did.
Mm.
But he was like the burgeoning star. He was like the heir apparent, clearly, that him and Stallone Stallone was a little higher up here in regards to box office and
Yeah.
cred, but Schwarzenegger was right behind him. And another person who really liked Schwarzenegger as well was a person named Barry Diller, who was at the time he was the head of 20th Century Fox, and he's
Right.
like, I just met Schwarzenegger at a party. He's funny, he's charming. We really need to do something with him. But he made it specifically said, I don't want him to be a caveman. I don't want him to be a robot. I want something, that really brings out his personality more.
Yeah.
So he's like, I got $10 million. Someone find me something. So they find this, they look for the developmental scripts. And there's a script by a writer named Jeff Loeb. So
Mm.
people who don't know, Jeff Loeb back then what did Teen Wolf. He co-wrote that. He
Mm.
did a couple other things as well. Now Jeff Loeb is known for like his history of not only great stuff in comic books. I mean, he did stuff like he wrote Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Hulk. He created the Red Hulk. Some people might know what Red Hulk is from the latest Captain
Mm.
America movie, but he was actually the head of Marvel Television for a long time too.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
before that, he was a writer on Lost and Hero. So, he's really big stuff there. But back then, he was like, he did Teen Wolf, and that's pretty much it. His original story was more of a downbeat story about a retired, world-weary Israeli super soldier who's called out of retirement after his wife and daughter were kidnapped. And supposedly, Gene Simmons from Kiss, who at the
Yeah.
time had a bit of the acting bug. He did Wanted, Dead or Alive. He did that film with John Stamos. I forgot what that one was called.
Well, he did
Too
Runaway
young.
with Tom Selleck as well. Runaway with Tom
Runaway.
Selleck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Too Young to Die with John Stamos as well, which is the first Gene Simmons like movie. I love Kiss, but I never seen him act until that film. He had a small film thing in Trick or Treat, but it didn't find any traction whatsoever. So Joel Silver, who at the time super producer for the 80s, he's like, we're going to bring in someone called Steven D'Souza who did rewrites on a movie 48 Hours, which became a big hit. And
Mm.
so that kind of got the ball like really running here. Joel Silver, though, is a name that a lot of people might know of, especially in the context of the 80s blockbusters. Really, when it comes to the 80s and how the films transformed, there was Bruckheimer and Simmons, and then there's Joel Silver. How would you
Yeah.
describe Joel Silver to people? Because the stuff that I come across is outlandish, a big character, but at the same time, he smelled a great movie and he made a lot of huge stars in the 1980s.
Oh, God, how would I describe Joel Silver? I'd just say he would make films that knew exactly what they were.
Hmm.
Like his films are very knowing and they kind of maybe take the piss out of themselves a bit. They're also ultra violent because that was like
Yeah.
the high watermark for super violent movies. He seemed to be very good at packaging and finding like really good actors for leads, you know. And he was I can say he was good at packaging. He was good at finding writers, like he worked a lot with Stephen E. D'Souza. And but he was ambitious, he did The Matrix, which was kind of out there. He did The Adventures of Ford Fairlane,
Yeah.
which
Hudson
was
Hawk.
Hudson Hawk was which was way out there. He was just this well, he's an amazing character, isn't he? He's a guy that just he's a scrappy, kind of wheeling dealing guy with just amazing confidence in himself. And I think all of his films were just they were just always really, really entertaining, really funny, great characters, sexy, and ultra violent. Yeah,
You mentioned before the comedy in the writing, Shane Black, another kind of like product of kind of
yeah,
like the Joel Silver thing, and he kind of invented or revolutionized the buddy cop comedy or the action
yeah,
comedy. 48
yeah,
Hours, Lethal Weapon, films
yeah.
like that. We mentioned Shane Black. What was the one that Bruce Willis did? Last Boy Scout. That was another one
Yeah, it's
that
amazing.
Joel Silver's part of. So he did a lot of big films. You mentioned the writing. So Steven DeSouza, he comes in and he does some changes. The first thing they did is like they want to put comedy in there, and they need to make it about Arnold. So when DeSouza is pitching to Arnold, he found that there was some lines that were kind of troubling because of the Austrian accent. So they had to kind of
Right.
change things around it. And it's something that he did with the Running Man as well. And
Yeah,
supposedly, and Salazar has said that a bunch of times, this little anecdote about how he came across Schwarzenegger doing singing lessons.
right.
And when he said, "Why were you doing singing lessons?" And he's like, "Are you trying to do a musical?" He goes, "No, because I need to master and control my voice because my accent is so thick." So he'll do singing lessons to kind of control his
Right.
vocal cords and such, which I find incredibly interesting because Schwarzenegger, we all know about the exterior, the muscles, the
Yeah,
brawn and all that
yeah.
stuff. He's a brilliant mind though. Like he's he
Yes,
he
he is. Yeah,
he knows exactly what he's doing with his career, but also philosophically how he knows how he wants to be seen on screen. And the accent, I'm sure, was a big problem for him when he
yeah.
started. But I
yeah,
think by the time Commando came along, he made it to his advantage more than anything else.
yeah. Well, I think that's what makes, for me, what makes a really great superstar is an actor who is in control of his image. You know, they don't just go from film to film. Like Steve McQueen was in complete control of his image, especially, when he
Mm.
did films like Bullet and The Getaway. They didn't make fools. These kind of guys, they don't make fools of themselves in movies because they know exactly how the audience sees them. Also, like someone like Michael Douglas, who had that great run throughout the 80s and 90s, and he basically played the same character each time. It was
Yeah.
a nice guy, but he was just like he
A
was
little
very
bit of
flawed. It was
sleaze.
a mistake. Yeah, a bit of a sleaze, but it was like your eye. It was like, well, that's sleaze, but you know what I mean? It was like he was flawed. And he made a whole career out of playing those roles. And the films were really interesting and part of the fabric of the zeitgeist of the times. Yeah,
Bringing in to direct Mark L. Lister, he was doing like kind of like a lot of exploitation stuff.
yeah,
Class of 1984 is kind of like a trash classic that people kind of love.
yeah,
Firestarter, he did that as well as an
yeah,
adaptation of Stephen King novel. How he got into this film, he said in the interview, is that he was at the Playboy Mansion at a
yeah,
Midsummer Night's Dream themed party. So he's sitting in his
yeah,
pajamas and he's next to Joel Silver. And at that point, Joel Silver kind of pitched him the script. Not the script, but the idea for the film. At which point, Mark Ellis is like, can I read the script? And he goes, no, because if you read the script, you're not going to want to do the movie. Which was pretty funny because I think at the time, maybe DeSalza didn't like have his hands on it. Um, but key to this whole thing, again, it comes back to Schwarzenegger. First off, Colonel John Matrix. Is there been a better name for an action hero, maybe outside of James Bond, than John Matrix? It sounds fantastic.
yeah. I mean, it just sets up the film, doesn't it? It's just that, the name is so outlandish that it just tells you what kind of film it's going to be. If his name
And
was John Smith, you'd be like, okay,
and again, you mentioned before Joel Silver in The Matrix. It's funny to see the connection between the character of John Matrix and then the movie The Matrix that comes out like 20
yeah,
years or so afterwards. No,
yeah,
let me see, 85, 14 years afterwards. Sorry.
yeah,
So Schwarzenegger said that this movie was a big step for him because he did Conan and Terminator, and he got to play like a dad in this movie, like a single father.
yeah,
And like at the start of the film, you see like scenes between him and Alyssa Milano, and they're going out for ice cream
yeah.
and they're doing all this stuff. Is very much, he's a
Feeding,
girl dad.
yeah,
Is the context these days, right? But he's also kind of like this fighting machine. So he bring about the sort of personality. But he also was very aware about the whole Stallone aspect of this whole thing because in '85
yeah,
Rambo 2 comes out.
yeah,
And that made $300 million worldwide. In fact, 85 for Stallone was huge here because it was Rambo 2 and it was Rocky 4. So
yeah,
like he's like, just on top of the world then. And Schwarzenegger knows this and he's like, okay, you're gonna do Rambo, I'm gonna do Commando. And sure enough, that was something that was like really big for him. When it came to that thing though, the Stallone Schwarzenegger, I'm a bigger Stallone fan because I love kind of like his dramas as well. I like movies like
yeah,
Lock Up and the original Rocky and stuff. But when it came
yeah,
to their rivalry, um, to me, up to around 85, it was all Stallone. But after
yeah,
that,
yeah,
I think that's when Schwarzenegger just went like this because Stallone was making bad
yeah,
choices, and
yeah, yeah,
Schwarzenegger, again, going back to his intelligence, was making really good choices because he was working with really fine directors.
yeah,
John McTiernan, Predator, back with James Cameron, and a bunch of other
yeah,
guys after that. And I think that's something that really separated him from Stallone because Stallone, very much his ego, a lot of times will take over projects and he'll rewrite things and such. But
mm,
Schwarzenegger was known as more as a collaborator than anything
yeah,
else. I mean, I know Mark Lester talks about, I know Stephen E. D'Souza many times talked about how he's written with Schwarzenegger and he didn't have ego like a lot of other people did.
yeah, yeah,
I think there was such an inherent self of who he was, Schwarzenegger, that any type of thing regarding ego or whatever outside of competitiveness with other actors
yeah,
is something that really drove him. And I think for me, like post Commando or Schwarzenegger all the way.
yeah. And he knew when to just kind of like be in service of great filmmakers like James Cameron.
Mm,
You don't hear about him, going head to head with James Cameron on T2 or wanting to change things. It's like you get this sense that it's like, no, this guy knows what he's doing. You know. Yeah. Well, Stallone was at an interesting point in his career because after Rocky, he really tried to become like the next Al Pacino or something,
Right.
and it didn't work out, and he reluctantly went back to Rocky. I think by the time Rocky 3 was a hit, I think he was in the mindset of, let's just go for the action route. Let's just give the
Mm.
audiences what they want. And I think that in the 80s, he was the height of his career, but he was making the worst films of his career in a way.
That's a really good point because we talk about the
Yeah,
Rockies and Rambos, but in between that, you got films that just weren't really hitting. There's people know, Stop or My Mum Will Shoot, but there's also Rhinestone who's trying to do something there. He's
yeah,
directing Staying Alive that doesn't do anything either.
yeah,
It always seemed to me like he was always at war at himself as to what he wanted people to perceive him to be and what he thought he
yeah,
was. And I
yeah,
think to me, in my opinion of Stallone is that he's such a talented writer and creator that a lot of the times that was the stuff he wanted to be known for, but the stuff they became
yeah,
famous for was the things that was going to went against his
yeah,
natural instincts, and with that comes fame, superstardom,
yeah.
money, and that changes a lot of things, I think.
What's interesting, one of the things I like about the Rocky films is each Rocky film tells you where Stallone is in his life and career.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
in Rocky 3, he's being seduced by the money and the fame. But I think that during the 80s, that's what Stallone was like. He was getting the massive paydays, but most of the films weren't as good as they should have been.
Mm,
But he did make really entertaining films, like stuff like Judge Dredd is entertaining. But when you think about it, that should be a great film, right? You know.
yeah. Again,
So
Judge Dredd, written by Stephen E. D'Souza as well. He wrote
yes,
the
yeah,
adapted that, so
yeah,
he's got his fingers in a lot
yeah,
of pies. Old Stephen here. Die
yeah,
Hard, of course, being another one of the movies he wrote. Um, so Ray Dawn Chong as Cindy in the movie, like I remember
yeah,
her from a lot of movies in the 80s. There was one notorious movie she did with C. Thomas Howell. I don't know if you've ever seen it, called Soul Man, which was a
yeah,
movie that was on TV sometimes. It was like
yeah.
a comedy, which is I know how long it will last these days, but in the context of our very PC times, it was a very kind of interesting film when that came out. Supposedly
Well,
the
they were
role of
married for a while,
Cindy
right? Those two were married for a while.
was C. Thomas Howell.
Yeah, yeah. They were married
Really?
for
I
like
had
five,
no
6
idea.
years. Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah,
wow. Okay, cool. Had no idea about
yeah.
that. And Rae Dawn Chong, she's the daughter of Chong from Cheech and Chong fame. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
That's right, Tim. The role of Cindy originally was written as a Caucasian character, so supposedly the names coming in to read for it: Sharon Stone, who would go on to co-star with Schwarzenegger later in Total Recall; Bridget Nielsen, who just did Red Dawn. I imagine they didn't want to do that whole thing again. Then she came in, and she said that when she came in, she knew she had to really get this audition done right because
yeah,
this was a big thing, but it was like written for someone who kind of looked like her. And there's a scene in the movie. I don't know if it's still in the movie. I'm trying to remember if I saw it last time when still Schwarzenegger is shuffling through her bag, and he pulls out a dildo, and she's like, "Well, I get lonely on the road sometimes." And then when they did that scene
yeah.
in auditioning, she kind of screamed out, "Oh, that's not mine!" And like in a comedic way, which Schwarzenegger loved and everyone loved, and that got her pretty much cast in a in the role.
Okay.
This little silly kind of quip. Yeah, that I don't think was in the movie. I'm not 100%. Maybe it must be a deleted
Well,
scene or something.
I remember that scene, but nowadays I always watch the director's cut, and I don't
Right.
remember it from the director's cut. So I wonder whether it was taken out from the director's cut, but it is in the theatrical. I do remember
I
that
know
scene.
there is a scene where they're both in the car, they're
Yeah,
following the Sunny character, and he's
yeah,
rifling for her stuff. And I'm trying to remember if that scene was in the. I got to watch it again afterwards. But it's definitely
yeah,
something that was part of the script in the audition process.
mm,
And so was supposedly a sex scene between the two.
yeah.
Where, funny enough, where
Yeah.
they're flying, she's like an amateur pilot. They're flying to the island
Yeah,
where they have to find his daughter. But they took it out because they just thought it was too gratuitous. But later, the director Mark L. Lester said that Fox is also afraid that it wouldn't go down well in the southern states of America to see an interracial
oh wow.
kind of sex scene
Oh,
on
okay.
screen. So they took that whole
Yeah,
thing out. But she's fantastic in the movie, and she said that she had a great time doing the
yeah.
role as well. And I think the comic relief she kind of brings to it was really cool. I really dug her in
Well,
this film.
one of the things I love about the film is that they don't go there in the movie. It's just,
Yeah.
he's a guy on a mission, and he hasn't got time for that.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, he shouldn't have anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But I remember seeing the movie originally and I guess we'll talk about favorite scenes later. But I love the scene where Arnie and Bill Duke are just beating the crap out of each other. And
right.
she's just like saying, "You guys are crazy. You guys eat too much red meat."
Hmm.
And I just love her character. She just subtly satirizes the whole action genre, not in a heavy-handed way.
Hi guys, Matt here from Matt's Movie Reviews, letting you know that the Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel has launched channel membership. This provides exclusive videos and other cool stuff as well for all channel members. It's under one tier, one price, and with that one price you get exclusive reviews. For example, I'll be going through the American Film Institute's top 100 movies. So every week I'll do a new review based on that movie list. You can get exclusive reviews based on your requests. Request a movie review and I will review it for you. You'll also get exclusive content for behind the scenes stuff as well. You also get exclusive interviews that I haven't posted yet as part of my podcast, like older interviews with Academy Award winners and other great filmmakers and actors as well, and a bunch of other cool stuff as well. I hope you can all join up, be part of this great experience I have an offer for you. Support indie content creators, support a movie critic like myself who is trying to make it through the content creator space. Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel memberships. Please join and get some great exclusive content.
She's
No,
delighted
not
with
at
the
all,
movie.
because she's plugged in, she's thrown into the situation, right? She's just trying to get to
Yeah,
work. She's getting hit on by
yeah.
David Kelly, and
David
you
Patrick
know, she's
Kelly. Yeah,
trying to, yeah, and then she's trying to get home, and then all of a sudden she's wrapped up into this international, kidnapping plot with this,
yeah,
you know, Austrian mercenaries going out to save his daughter. Like it's
yeah,
a really good kind
yeah,
of I wouldn't call it frantic, but like close to the edge of teetering that line where
yeah,
other actresses maybe could go over the line and
yeah,
it might be too much, maybe like a Kate Capshaw, Indiana Jones kind of style thing where some people didn't
yeah,
like how
yeah.
she approached it. But I think the way that Ray Chong does it in this movie is really good.
And she's great in it because she completely reacts like anybody would,
Yeah,
you know? And so it really grounds the movie and it makes you realize as an audience member that the film knows what it is,
yeah.
you know? Like, because when the film first starts, you're like, well, what kind of level is this movie? How are we supposed to take this film? And she basically tells you, the audience, how to take the movie, you know?
We
That this is a
mentioned
crazy world
before,
that we're in.
definitely. Mentioned before about the girl dad context. Alyssa Milano plays young Jenny Matrix.
Mm,
So she was on the hit show Who's the Boss at the time. She was 12 years old when she was doing the movie. She said that she loved doing the film. She said that Schwarzenegger was great with her, even helped her do algebra homework. And she also said that there was some unexpected benefits from being in a movie like this because Commando was massive in Japan. And she said that she scored a 5 album contract in Japan to be like a
oh,
young
wow.
pop star. And
I can
they
imagine.
assumed that she could sing, and sure enough, all 5 of her albums went platinum in Japan because of the Commando connection. So that's a really cool kind of thing there for young Alyssa Milano. I want to talk about I think, the most fascinating character in this movie, and I think that one of the most fascinating performances in all of action movies in the 1980s. I want to talk about Vernon Wells as Captain
Yeah.
Bennett. This, I think that if this movie had a stock villain bad guy kind of in it,
Mm.
that it probably not be as notorious as it is now. And there was another actor who was cast in this movie. Um, his name was talking about names. His name was Wings Hauser. I don't
Yeah.
know what else he's been in.
He was in, do
So
you ever see the movie Vice Squad?
no, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a really great movie. It's a bit similar to the Schrader movie Hardcore.
Okay.
And he plays like this evil pimp in it. He actually died recently, I think, Wingshauser.
Oh,
Yeah,
very sad to hear that. Wings Hauser.
yeah,
What was it called again? Vice Squad. I gotta write this down.
yeah. It's a great
Vice
movie.
Squad. Supposedly he didn't last long because Mark Lester was shooting the scene and he just thought that he couldn't see how Wings could intimidate Schwarzenegger, how he could be kind of like
Yeah,
the equal to him. So they have to find someone else, and there we have Vernon Wells. At that point, known more for his role as a kind of like the psycho motorcycle guy in Mad Max 2, is fantastic in that movie,
Yeah,
which he parodies in Weird Science, which is another film that's produced by Joel Silver. So maybe Joel Silver grabbed him from that
yeah,
movie and brought him here. He comes in, and a lot of people, something a lot of people talk about is the costume. So people who don't know, he's got fingerless gloves. He's got like this really snug kind of uniform,
yeah,
leathers and such. This chain mail. So I read someone describe it as a chain mail wife beater. And the reason why it's so snug in the movie is because the costume was made for Wings Hauser. It wasn't made for Vernon Wells,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
didn't have enough time to change it. But he just went with it. He comes in with the Freddie Mercury style moustache as well. He has the Aussie accent. And as soon as you see him, you just know this guy is just different. And the way that Vernon Wells did it, talked about it, is that he just wanted to go in there and just be as psycho and intimidating as he could, because he thought that the character deserved it. But I think he kind of, and I don't think like and he meant it in any way, intentionally kind of made almost kind of like a over the top kind of I don't know if you call it a hammy, in a certain ways hammy, kind of like
mm,
context that will later become a cult
yeah,
figure in action
yeah.
movies. I mean, I know people dress up like him as Halloween. I know
Oh,
the wrestler CM Punk every year he dresses as Halloween,
yeah,
and his wife dresses as Lisa Milano's character Jenny, like he wears the chainmail and all that stuff. But I just think that he's just terrific in his movie, and his performance in it is just so unique and so oddball, but at the same time just so incredibly memorable that I can't
yeah,
think of the movie being Commando. Commando isn't Commando without what Vernon Wells does with the role of
yeah.
Bennett, I think, anyway.
Well, he's talked about how he played it as if he was in love with Matrix. He loved
Right.
him, but he also wanted to kill him. So kind of a homoerotic thing going on there, which is
Well,
interesting. Yeah.
it is interesting because a lot of people kind of pick up on that. And there's certain signs. Well, I mean, if you look at the costume, the gay leather kind of thing is something that a lot of people
Mm.
come up. Lester said he wanted more. He wanted to look like a punk rocker. So maybe he was thinking more class of 1984, but instead
Yeah,
he got like, Frankie Goes to Hollywood instead, which can happen sometimes because again, Vernon Wells is coming into it. It's not his costume. Maybe there would have been something different if it was like someone else, who knows? And so a lot of people have talked about the subtext there in regards to, especially during the scenes at the end where they're doing the fight scene, and there's certain facial kind of like grim stuff he does, like grimaces and such,
yeah,
are almost they
yeah,
seem kind of like I don't know. Some people see it as some people have called it like orgasmic or horny or whatever, and I don't know whether that he intended that to be that it's the
yeah,
violence that turns him on, or whether it's Matrix that turns him on, or he's heartbreaking, whatever. Like Vernon himself, like he's had different opinions about it over the years. Sometimes he says it was, sometimes he says it wasn't. But I think it's a very interesting way to kind of look at those characters because I don't think Stephen E. D'Souza kind of like
yeah.
meant it to be that way, but it kind of I think just the costume and anything else really does kind of like, especially when they have lines like I think one of the when we're going to talk about favorite lines, and this isn't a favorite, but one of the lines that Bennett says is I'm going to stick my knife in you and twist it, or something like stick my knife in you deep and twist it, something of that
Yeah,
context, and I think that's going to
yeah.
make people raise their eyebrows a little bit.
Well, it's also interesting in conjunction with the kind of arguably other homoerotic aspects of the movie. I mean, you've got like the close-ups of Arnie's body and stuff,
Mm,
especially when he's getting his costume ready. And the fact that there's no love interest in the movie, there's
yeah.
no wife, and there's a comment about Boy George and stuff, and
Oh yeah,
it
at the
just makes
start.
it,
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot about
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah. I
totally
don't
forgot
think
about
it's
that.
that homoerotic, but it just adds a little flavor to it that makes it a bit different. Yeah. By the way, did you know there's arguably a in joke to Mad Max 2 in the movie?
No, tell me, please.
But when Vernon Wells gets on the boat, where there's a guy that greets him as Wes, which is his character's
Right.
name in Mad Max
Nice.
2.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't pick up on that when I saw it. No, cool, cool. I like
It's
that.
kind of mumbled, But I don't know whether it's an in joke or I don't know. Maybe the guy was a fan and he just fumbled it. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting.
It is. So this movie's made for $10 million. A
Yeah.
lot of interesting things happened during the production. Um, One of them, which I thought was really interesting, is that um, the knife that Schwarzenegger uses in the movie, the big one, has a name. It's called
Okay.
Life Support System Number One. That's what the name of the knife. It was made by this bloke named Jack Crane. He's a guy who passed away, like, I think maybe like 10 years ago. He created movie knives. So he made different knives for
Okay.
movies and movie stars. And Arnold loved the life support system knife so much that Crane made two other movies. Like, the smaller ones he kind of throws at people during the
Yeah.
siege at the end. One of them was called the Scorpion, and one of them was what's called Commando. However, he refused to make a knife for Bennett. So Bennett's supposed to be the knife guy, right? Like he's the one with all the knives. He's
Yeah.
sharpening a knife because Crane had a philosophy is that he only made knives for good guys, and he did so throughout his career. Predator, Roadhouse, Demolition Man was some of the stuff that Crane made knives
Mhm.
for, which I think was really cool. The scene where Matrix has Sonny and he's holding him over the cliff.
Yeah.
That will be in one of our, I'm sure, our favorite scenes
Yeah.
and such. So Mark Lester overestimated Schwarzenegger in regards to his strength. He thought that he'll be able to carry and actually hold, you know,
Mm.
the actor there, David Patrick Kelly. Um, yeah, yeah, and he could, it wasn't going to happen. So they brought a crane in. So they brought a crane in and held him up there and such. So that was something they did there. And then finally, the reason why we have the big shootout at the end. That wasn't actually in the script. So originally in the script, there was only supposed to be a dozen bodyguards or so that Matrix goes through, and then there's going to be a big fight scene between him and Bennett. So going back to the Stallone competition thing, Mark Lester manages to get a sneak preview of watching Rambo 2, and he realized how many people getting killed in that. And him and Schwarzenegger was like, no, we gotta kill more people than Stallone in that. So they ended up slaying like up to like 150 extras, to the point where it blows their budget and they can't
Right.
film the big fight scene. The big fight scene between Bennett and Matrix is supposed to be on this like an exotic island or something. Like it's supposed to be like on the island
Yeah.
between the two guys. And so instead they just had to do it in the basement in the lot of Fox Studios. And going back
Mm.
again to the homoerotic kind of symbolic aspects of it, a lot of people found it kind of interesting that they're surrounded by pipes everywhere in that scene, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
which kind of goes back to that thing. So yeah, that's kind of interesting stuff that's happening there. It would have been interesting to see though what a big fight scene would have looked like on an island. So I suppose it's going to be an island. It was just going to
Yeah.
be them two, and it's like all sorts of contraptions everywhere because it's supposed to be like a place where this army was being trained and such. That would have been pretty cool to see. But I like the fight scene as it is in the film. I thought it was really cool, kind of intimate, kind of knife fight between the two.
Yeah, it was good, but I was watching it thinking, wow, imagine if this had been as good as the Stallone Van Damme fight in Expendables 2,
Mm.
you know? So I think it's a little bit disappointing, especially after the massive siege scene, you know?
And
But
going
yeah,
back to the Stallone thing, did you find it interesting? I know I did because I was thinking about it afterwards. How the tit for tat between the two is that
yeah,
Schwarzenegger has a big fight scene, knife scene with his hulking, adversary in
mm,
Commando, and in Cobra the year after, he's
yeah,
Stallone with a big knife going against
yeah,
this actor whose name escapes me, who kind of looks like Stallone. Sorry, it kind of looks like
yeah,
Schwarzenegger as well with the jaw and everything. And
mm,
they're having a big knife scene as well. I think it's really interesting that they didn't just keep going back and forth like this.
yeah,
Not saying that's what happened, but it's something
yeah.
to think about again.
Well, that was fun because I got to experience that in real time because I was in my 20s when they were making all their big movies, and there was always some kind of comment that Schwarzenegger's character would make about Stallone, and then
Yeah.
likewise, in Twins and Tango and Cash, right?
Oh, and
Yeah,
also, yeah, Twins was the one where he's walking down the road, Schwarzenegger is, and he sees the
yeah, and he
poster of
flexes his arm in
Stallone.
front of the poster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's just like,
yeah,
yeah, whatever. I want to talk about the score in this movie because I absolutely love the music in this film.
Yeah,
James Horner, who pretty much reinvented the action score for for
yeah,
action movies. He did like a bunch of great stuff. 48 Hours was kind of like his calling card for what he did.
yeah,
Joel Silver produced that. He brings James Horner over here. It's his really unique stuff. It's got synths, it's got steel drums, some saxophone stuff. It's kind of like jazzy at the same time, but it's really kind of driving
yeah,
stuff. I absolutely love it. There's similarities between, like, if you listen to 48 Hours, Red Heat, and Commando, there's a lot of similarities in between, like some of
yeah,
the sounds that he brings, to the point where I remember clearly watching Commando. Sorry, clearly watching 48 Hours like a couple of years after Commando, I think to myself, that sounds exactly the same. And I needed
yeah,
to, like, I think yesterday I brought up both main themes, and they're very similar, but there are differences as
yeah,
well, but incredibly similar between the two.
yeah,
But awesome in the same way, because a lot of the stuff around that time was kind of stock in a lot of ways, and James Horner brought
yeah.
something different to it, very unique, I think.
The unique thing that James Horner did, like I remember, like with John Barry, sometimes he would, even with his Bond scores, he would use the same motifs sometimes from previous scores, and it would
Mm.
be like a debate amongst fans. But James Horner also rips himself off with his scores, and it's very, very similar to the 48 Hours score. Yeah, so
It's
very
that really
interesting.
driving,
I,
jazzy, then dun, and there's
yeah,
that one melody, dun 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 dun. That's that melody
yeah,
that I'm sure I used in both of them because I remember it just
yeah,
in yeah, it's great stuff, but yeah,
yeah.
very similar.
Well, 48 Hours was a big movie for me because it was just the level of violence, but also the humor. And the score is just so intense and so full on that it really changed the way I looked at movies, and awesome. I actually got to interview Walter Hill a few years ago,
Oh yeah,
which was an
okay.
amazing experience. Yeah, yeah,
I was reading an interview with Stephen DeSalza, and he was talking about how Walter Hill had rewrote the 48 hour script, and Silver didn't like it, so he brings in Stephen DeSalza. He was only doing TV at the time, and Walter Hill absolutely
yeah,
hated hated that he was doing this,
yeah,
to the point where he would get have grab the courier who would grab Stephen DeSalza's script rewrites that went to the production of it. He'll grab it and change everything back to how he
yeah.
had it previously. So it was a bit of a battle between the two
What's
guys there.
what's kind of interesting because it's almost like Nick Nolte is Walter Hill and
Yeah,
Stephen D'Souza is Eddie Murphy, and that's what the
yeah, that's
movie is.
right.
It's the friction between those two approaches. That's what makes it great. And that friction's not really there in the sequel because
No,
it's
no.
everything's more in Eddie Murphy's favor, and it doesn't work as well.
It doesn't, and the film suffers as a result, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
another 48 hours had some cool scenes, but a lot of it was just a rehash of what made the first 48 hours so great. I found,
yeah,
I found, I found anyway. So Commando releases October 4, 1985. It debuts as a #1 film in America. It makes 57.4 million worldwide, which isn't bad for a $10 million,
yeah,
budget. Um, so the critics didn't like it, but who gives a shit? So afterwards, there was some rumblings that there might be a sequel happening, um, and supposedly Schwarzenegger said no to anything like that. And I found it very interesting in that you're talking before how Stallone, when he latched onto something and it worked, Rocky,
yeah,
Rambo, what have you,
yeah,
Expendables later on, he would like milk it for everything it's worth. When it comes to
yeah,
Schwarzenegger, though, outside of Terminator,
yeah,
has he done a sequel to? I can't think of him doing a sequel to anything else. Oh, Conan the Destroyer. Maybe Conan the Destroyer.
yeah,
Maybe it was such a bad experience he decided not to do that many sequels afterwards. But outside of Terminator, like he never did the Predator follow up. He never did True Lies follow up.
yeah, yeah,
Never did a Commando follow up. And I think it's very interesting
yeah,
how in this tit for tat between these two guys,
yeah,
one guy was very much franchise sequel centric, and
yeah,
Schwarzenegger outside of one Conan sequel and the Terminator stuff, which happened years
yeah.
after, more
Well,
as
it's
kind of like
interesting
a
because
yeah
maybe Arnie didn't need to,
yeah
whereas Stallone did. Like whenever he made a Rambo film, a Rambo sequel or any sequel, it was always because his career was dipping, it seems.
hmm.
You know, like Rambo 2 comes after Rhinestone.
Yeah, exactly.
Rocky 3 comes after a run of flops, right? You know, so it's interesting, yeah, to think who was the most powerful at that period.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Let's talk about some of our favorite lines in this movie because this film is chock-a-block with so many great quotes and lines. I think like some of the best that Schwarzenegger has delivered on film.
Mm,
Um,
definitely.
how about you go first? Tell me some of the ones that you really enjoyed.
Uh, remember Sully when I promised to kill you last? I lied.
I lied. Yep,
Yeah,
that's a great one. I like the one where he's on the plane and he has that kind of like that minder or bodyguard that the bad guys have to keep
yeah,
an eye on him, and he kills him.
yeah,
And then he says to the
yeah,
stewardess, "Please don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired," which I think is
yeah.
fantastic.
Which is interesting. I think that might have been ripped off James Bond in
Oh, really?
Thunderball.
Ah,
Yeah, in Thunderball, he kills somebody when he's being chased by Spectre. And he says to a woman, "Don't," along the lines of, "Don't bother him. He's dead tired." Oh, no, don't bother him. He's just dead.
right.
So, and D'Souza would have been a Bond fan, I'm sure.
Another ones that I enjoy. Of course, you got to talk about the final blow to Bennett, where he gets like a pipe thrown into his
Mm.
chest, and he says, "Let off some steam, Bennett," which is a very kind of a popular one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Cheesy.
and then
Cool.
there's another one right at the end of the film where the major general finally makes it to the island. These guys always come like 30 minutes too late to these things,
Yeah,
after Schwarzenegger has just laid out everything. And the major general says, "Leave anything for us." And John Matrix says, "Just bodies." And that's how
yeah.
they end the film there. So once again, Schwarzenegger doing great stuff.
Yeah.
Favorite
I like Ray
scenes?
Dawn Chung's line
But go ahead.
where she says, "Can you tell me what this is all about?" And Matrix says, "Yeah, a guy I trusted for years wants me for dead." And she says, "That's understandable. I've only known you for 2 minutes and I want you dead too."
That's a really good one.
It's just
And
great
that's a
character
rare
work, you know.
and it's a rare one
Mm.
because a lot of people have talked about the how Schwarzenegger has all the best lines, but we're talking before how Ray Don Chong was just
Yeah, yeah,
pulling them out of
yeah.
as well. It was fantastic.
And also people forget that Schwarzenegger actually says, "I'll be back" in the movie.
He
He says
does.
to Bennett, "I'll be back, Bennett."
Yep, that's right.
So that's interesting because the time between him filming Commando and Terminator being out in the cinemas, it mustn't have been very long. So was that just a coincidence, or was he aware of the impact that that line had at the time? That's something I'd like to ask him if I ever met him. Yeah.
I'd imagine that maybe the film had come out by then and they kind of put it in there
Mm.
as kind of like a little it's kind of like watching a band and not playing their greatest hits. Sometimes you might want
Yeah.
to watch an actor. Like
Yeah.
when Denzel Washington might do something and he might do that kind of that laugh he does and say "my
Yeah.
man" like that, or Pacino does kind of like something similar, or De Niro.
Ooh-ah.
Exactly. Also, like a variations of those things. Clint Eastwood as well, Dirty
Yeah.
Harry, like the
Yeah.
number of lines he has in there. Well, I think people sometimes merge them into one. Like at one point, he might say, how many bullets did he go through, or the other one is "Make My Day." I
Yeah.
think some people mix them up and forget they're in different films as well. So yeah, there's a lot of that,
Yeah.
I think, with a lot of action stars, which is something that I find is kind of missing these days, right? Like so, a lot of superstars, action stars, it doesn't really have that anymore, unless it's like a superhero movie kind of context.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a really
like so,
interesting one in
yeah.
James Bond. In You Only Live Twice, after a bad guy gets killed, Sean Connery says "Bon appetit,"
Hmm.
and then in License to Kill, there's an overdubbed line by Timothy Dalton after he throws this guy into like a drawer of maggots.
Right.
There's an overdub, and he says "Bon appetit," which I found very interesting that they overdubbed it. Because if you're going to overdub it, you're like, oh, we're just going to use a line we've already used. But it's kind of cool because it links it back to the other films, you know? Yeah.
Maybe like the studio brass were watching it and going, you know what line would good here? Remember the one in, You're Gonna Live Twice where he
Yeah.
said this? Let's bring it back. It might be like a cool
Well, I'm
little
sure they
thing.
thought there wasn't enough humor in License to Kill. It's a pretty grim movie.
Well, yeah, that definitely is. Um,
Yeah.
Favorite scenes. What scenes of yours in the movie really kind of stand out for you?
Well, I like the fight with Bill Duke, just the craziness of it and Ray Dawn Chong's response to it. And also, what was interesting to me is that I don't know whether you're aware of this, but in England, where I'm from, the end scene, I don't know what you call it, where he just kills everybody on the island. That was heavily cut on video and in the cinema.
Is that
So
right?
it wasn't until I got like the Region One DVD of Commando that I actually saw the scene where he chainsaws the guy's arm off and then hits him with
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So I'd never seen that before. So it's just like the how violent that whole end scene is. It's crazy violent, and it's very emblematic of the level of violence that was in those films in the 80s and 90s. You
That
know?
yeah, that scene where he goes into the shed and they blast it, the thing, they
Yeah,
blast the whole thing, and he gets up and he's throwing um saws and he's throwing all sorts of stuff at him, and
yeah,
like he's got pitchforks and everything, and he's just going through all of them, knives, guns.
yeah,
A very very resourceful killing machine John Matrix was. That's for
yeah.
sure.
And it's interesting because the level of violence that was in action movies in America, it's like the censors in England just did had a problem with it. I remember
Do
in
you
is
think it
it
got
Die Hard
swallowed up?
2?
Do you think it got
Yeah.
swallowed up in the whole kind of video nasty kind of thing with the horror movies? Is that what was happening, you think?
Yeah. And also in England, there was a famous thing where two kids killed another kid. They tied him to a railway track and he got killed by a train. And they
Right.
blamed Child's Play 3 because there was a similar scene in that. I mean, they banned Reservoir Dogs on video during that time,
Wow.
which is crazy. There was a lot of movies that you couldn't see because of the violence in them. But yeah, I remember in Die Hard 2, there's a scene where a guy gets killed with is it a stalactite or whatever it's called? A big piece of ice.
Right. Yeah.
That
Yep.
was
That's right. It goes
cut
it
out.
goes for his eye, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
Yep.
Cliffhanger was heavily edited as well. Cliffhanger's a Cliffhanger's maybe the apex, maybe. Do you think of the violence in the movies where everyone just dies? Just gets killed.
The scene where Craig Fairbanks is kicking the shit out of Michael Rooker and he's doing soccer commentary.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
just like, my God, what the hell is happening here? And then, of course, a great liner, one liner by Michael Rourke at the end when he shoots him. He says, "Season's over, asshole," and he shoots him and throws him off the mountain. I
yeah.
think that's yeah, it really is. I think because that 93, the transition from action from those guys, and then a few years after that, it would become kind of like the era of Nicolas Cage action movies and people like that. They,
Yeah.
they kind of took over afterwards. So it's definitely like a bit of a yeah. I could see what you mean about that being the apex of action violence in Hollywood movies, especially.
Everybody would die. Even the two hippie kids in it, they
Hmm.
get killed.
The old
Whenever
man
I
gets
go back and
killed.
yeah, the guy from Old House on the Prairie, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it's every time I go back and rewatch one of those movies from that era or watch one I've never seen before, I'm always like, oh, this must have been made in like 86, 87, or 91 or something. Yeah,
I want to talk about some of our favorite scenes in the movie as well. The one
yeah,
scene that really grabbed me when I was a kid was the scene in the shopping mall, especially
yeah,
the part where Schwarzenegger's character of Matrix grabs the balloon and swings and
yeah.
lands on the
It's
elevator.
just crazy.
And because I
Yeah,
always thought to myself, it's like, because I'll go to like afterwards, like I might go to shops with my mum or something, and I'll be like, could you do that? I mean, if I grabbed these,
yeah,
would I be able to swing like that? Supposedly, the bloke who did it, the stunt man, David Patrick Kelly was had an interview. He talked about watching that stunt. It was very hard to find stuntmen for Schwarzenegger. So a lot of the stuff he
yeah,
had to
yeah,
do himself. But in regards to that one, the best guy they could find to do it was a bloke who was like 60 years old, stuntman, 60-year-old stuntman. It was actually as tall as David Patrick Kelly was, like only 5'4", because
I
they needed to
wonder
find
if it
someone a
was
little
with.
smaller
Hmm?
to make sure he can go across without
Well,
breaking the balloon or
I wonder
anything.
whether it was Richard Farnsworth. Do you know that guy, Richard Farnsworth? He
Sounds
became an
familiar.
actor. He did a film called The Grey Fox, which it might be an Australian film, maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But he was, I think he's at the end of The Getaway, the remake.
The
He's the old
the
man
Kim
in the
Basinger
car.
one. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And he was a stuntman back in like I guess even 30s or 40s. And I noticed that he was in the credits as one of the stuntmen. So you
Okay.
saying
Could
a
be.
6 foot guy
Yeah.
could have been him. He must have had a wig on there. He's an old grey guy, you know. Did you know that that supermarket, the mall, it's the same mall from Terminator 2?
The Sherman Oaks Galleria.
Yeah,
That's what it's called.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's it must be used for like a lot of like location stuff for Los Angeles, or maybe used to.
mm,
These days it'd be so many taxes and permits and stuff that needed. I don't think people shoot in
yeah,
Los Angeles anymore at all. But yeah, the
yeah,
Sherman Oaks Galleria is what
yeah,
it is. Yeah. I
yeah.
wonder what
And
else
they
has been
also
used now. I have
used,
to look it up.
well, they also used, you remember the end shootout in, well, in Stephen Burkoff's house in Beverly Hills Cop 1?
Yes, yeah.
That was used in Commando for some scenes.
Okay, it's like
And
the
apparently it
okay.
was, yeah, and apparently it was Harold Lloyd's estate, the silent action hero guy. It was his
Okay.
estate. So interesting,
Very
yeah.
cool.
Mm.
Another scene that I loved in the movie that again fascinated me when I was a kid was the escape from the airplane. Because you
Oh, yeah,
never he goes through like the bowels of the plane and then he goes down and he's ripping
yeah,
things open and then he jumps down and again I'm thinking to myself, could you do that? I mean, is that at all possible whatsoever? Like I'm not sure if it is, but again, just a fantastic scene right there because he has to get off somehow because Sully's
yeah,
watching him. He has to put the call in to the bad guy saying, yeah,
yeah,
he's on the plane, he's on his way and
yeah,
trying to get off there and jump in from the wheel of the plane down into the lake underneath it and then making his way again. That was another one that just kind of just I
yeah.
found it incredibly fascinating watching it.
Well, Schwarzenegger sells it, doesn't he? Because he's just this big
Hmm.
hulking guy, and you just believe it. But thinking about it now, talking to you, it's very interesting that this movie, as outlandish and as silly as it is, it does make it does spend time detailing how he gets from one place to another and how he does a bit of detective work and stuff. I think later on with action films, screenwriters didn't care about that stuff. It was just like, let's just jump from the next bit. Like in Die Another Day, the James Bond film, Pierce Brosnan does the same thing on the plane, but it doesn't even show you him jumping off or anything. Well, he filmed it, but they didn't even show it because it was like,
Mm.
we don't need to show it. But I think it's good that in action movies, when it doesn't insult your intelligence and it shows you how people get from A to B, and mm.
Supposedly there's a bit of a shared cinematic universe here. So, according to
Valverde,
a bunch of people, yeah, Valverde,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So it's used here as kind of like the fictional, country or wherever a bit of bad guys from. Die Hard 2,
yeah,
the tyrant guy, whatever be
yeah,
political prisoners from there too.
Franco Nero,
And D'Souza says that perhaps Predator is based there as
yeah,
well, which
yeah,
would be kind of interesting, I think, if it was a shared universe. What would have been cool if Matrix was the same guy that was in Predator. That would have been
yeah,
really kind of cool
yeah,
if there was a
yeah,
thread there as well. I don't think there is, but to
yeah,
think that in one shared universe is two Arnold Schwarzenegger
yeah.
killing machines is a quite kind of a, a frightening thing to think about.
I was really clued into all that, and then in Predators, the Hispanic lady, it was played by Elpidia Carrillo in the
Right,
original. She mentions that it happened in Nicaragua,
right.
so just disputing that it was Valverde, but I don't know. Yeah, there's also
Um,
that fun stuff about in Lethal, is it in Die Hard? There's a journalist that also appears in Ricochet.
oh, is that right? Is that the one
Yeah,
played
yeah,
by yeah, 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 yeah.
Mary Ellen
I know.
Trainor.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
who was married to Zemeckis, right? She was married to Robert Zemeckis. Yeah,
And D'Souza wrote Ricochet as well, didn't he?
yeah, yeah.
I love that film. That's an underrated movie. It really is. John Lithgow is a beast in that movie. I thought it was fantastic in it.
Yeah, if they brought that film out today, people would be raving about it. And there's not a decent Blu-ray of it. There's always problems every time they re-release it. It's either not a good aspect ratio or the print's not very good. But yeah, it's a great little film, that one.
I
Yeah,
love that one. Underrated Denzel Washington movie. Um,
yeah,
there was talk of a sequel. I was mentioning this before. So there's a little bit of talk on the net, and it's mentioned in websites that supposedly some people say that the sequel script that D'Souza made morphed into Die Hard, and he himself says that's not true. So,
yeah,
because Die Hard is of course based on a book, right?
yeah,
There's that there. So D'Souza said that the sequel would star Matrix as getting hired as a head of security for a giant corporation. Only he's being used and has to become a one-man army again. Exactly what corporation and what I'm not sure what it is.
yeah.
Um, but never came into fruition. Then in 2010, Deadline reported that Deadline reported that 20th Century Fox had David Ayer on board to do a remake of Commando,
Right.
but then that went nowhere as well. And then it got me thinking, they did a remake of Commando. Isn't Taken essentially just a remake of Commando? You have a
Yeah,
ex-Special
pretty
Forces
much. Yeah,
guy. He has
yeah,
his daughter. His daughter gets kidnapped. He has a deadline.
yeah.
People forget about Commando. He's on the clock. There's that scene where he puts his clock on. He's got like 16 hours or something. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, with a
Excuse me.
beep, 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 beep
Exactly. Remember
on his watch.
those old watches? Yeah, I love those watches.
I had the
Um,
same watch. It didn't go bip, bip, bip every second.
my older brother was like, I got to find that watch because it was a big watch. And back in the 80s, I don't know if you remember, like
Yeah,
anything with a watch had a calculator on it was known as kind of like just the most mind-blowing thing in the world, which is quite
yeah.
funny.
I had the James Bond Casio that would go off every single hour in high school. And my teachers would be like, is there no way you can switch it off so they'll every hour would be like ding, 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 ding.
It doesn't make the song, does it? Oh,
Yeah, I
that's
could
funny.
never figure out how to take it off, like so it wouldn't go off every hour.
But yeah,
Yeah,
that's my opinion anyway. I think Taken is essentially like that is a 20th Century Fox movie as well, and
yeah,
I think there has been a lot of films about reluctant hero forced out of retirement because of this and that or what have you, family
yeah.
members stolen, what have you. But to me, Taken is like a very clear. There's clear lines there, just in a lot of the plot points of what's going on. The only difference is there isn't one kind of like villain henchman guy on the other side that he has a kind of like a big rumble with at the end. Like
Yeah,
Liam Neeson's just taking out everyone. There isn't a
yeah,
distinctive kind of bad guy in there, which makes Commando so great because Vernon Wells does a
yeah.
fantastic job as Bennett in this film. And again, you can't think of Commando without thinking what Vernon Wells does in the movie.
And Taken has a hell of a lot more torture scenes as well.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Overall, so this movie 40 years anniversary since then. We don't want to see a remake of this, do we? This is a movie that belongs in its time and in its day.
Yeah.
I'm not up for it whatsoever.
I mean, you could make the same story and you wouldn't even have to pay any money to to the writers or anything because it's such a generic story. It's not the
Yeah,
story that is the movie.
yeah.
So
It's
no,
the
I don't think it would.
personalities.
But
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it's a
and
special movie.
it is. And in the context of Schwarzenegger films, I have a top five for sure. Would you put it in your top five
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger? Like it'd be up there, like Terminator, Predator, Commando, for
Well,
sure.
I was thinking this actually. Like, would you say that like this is an Arnie vehicle, right?
Yeah,
Whereas are the Terminator movies Arnie vehicles?
I'd
Do you get what I mean?
say.
Like,
I'd say from three onwards were. One and
yeah,
two were
yeah.
James Cameron films. One and
Yeah,
two
it's
were
a
James
James
Cameron
Cameron
films.
film, and he was
Yeah,
cast in the movie.
yeah,
They're not they're not engineered around him.
yeah,
You know, I'm sure there was discussions with Cameron on too. Like, well, I think it wasn't it Arnie that wanted to play the good guy,
yeah.
so that was a pretty change to the story. But so I mean, Terminator 1 and 2 would have to be in the top five, but certainly like you know the raw deals and the erasers and predators and all that. I would
Conan.
say it was yeah. See, Conan again. I don't know whether that was a vehicle either. That was just Milius. Just thinking that he looked the part. I don't know,
But again,
but
I think sometimes, like with Terminator, if he wasn't cast in the role, it's hard to think about who could maybe pull that off. And Conan's like
yeah,
it's very special, kind of like the way that the comic was, and like they're trying to find someone of that size and
yeah,
stature and charisma as well,
yeah,
to pull stuff like that off. Like for me, like if I was going to do a top five, it would be the first two Terminators, probably
yeah.
Predator, Conan, and Commando. That'll be like my five for like Varani.
Be honest with you, that might be mine as well. Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah.
I guess I just want to flick off the Terminator, so I've got more movies I could put in there.
Well, you could put one and two in there together and probably put in something like, I don't know. Like I was a huge fan of oh, what was the one he did with Belushi, the buddy cop movie,
Red
Walter
Heat,
Hill, Red Heat. I was a
Red
big
Heat.
fan of that movie. I love that film.
Yeah,
I thought that was a
yeah,
great film. Yeah. Um,
yeah. I mean, he's
yeah.
done some amazing action films. Yeah,
He has. I mean, and there's even movies like you mentioned Eraser before. Even I even love like his the comedy stuff he did, Twins, Kindergarten Cop.
yeah,
It was just
yeah,
such an interesting career that he had. But for me, like I think Commando is the movie where he's kind of like, I'm just gonna sit. This is me on my own 2 feet. I'm selling this film. It's me in the poster.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
a high concept kind of thing. It's not based on, a comic book or what have you. This is going to be like make or break. It's going to break a career, I think it further established him as kind of like this guy's like where Hollywood could say, yeah, he isn't just a guy he can do the cyborg,
yeah. Well,
whatever.
if he hadn't made Commando or something like it, he wouldn't have had the career that he had. It was make or break for him, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Because he'd done Conan, he'd done Terminator, but he was playing a robot, so it didn't really establish him as a presence, but as a guy that could do other stuff.
yeah,
It really just set him up as a movie star, and also looking back at it as someone that could take control of his career and had an idea about how he could present himself to audiences and stuff. Yeah.
well,
When I was growing up in the 80s, there was a film critic called Barry Norman, and
mhm,
he would talk about how the hell does Arnold Schwarzenegger have a career? He's the worst actor in the world. He's the highest paid. He's the most successful. So there was all this snark about Schwarzenegger in the 80s. And even I, as an impressionable guy, would be like, yeah, the guy can't act. He's rubbish. But I love his films. But when I go back to his films now, I just think this guy has got incredible presence. This is an
yes,
amazing movie star, and he is a good actor. And like you were saying about the musical thing that he was practicing, like he knew how to navigate around, his flaws as an actor, with his accent and stuff. And also I love the way that he navigated around his build. Like he had a sense of how ridiculous he looked on screen,
yeah.
whereas Stallone didn't. Stallone just thought I looked like a Greek god, I'm amazing, boom. Schwarzenegger was like, no, I know I look ridiculous, so I'm gonna play to it and have fun with it.
I
Yeah,
mean, that opening scene, before we see his face, we see his bicep
yeah,
carrying a freaking tree log.
yeah,
And I watched it and I'm just like, is that real? I mean, what the hell is that? And supposedly,
yeah,
like him doing, I think it started with Conan. He had to get smaller because the
mm,
muscle mass that he had before with the whole Olympia thing was restricting a lot of his movement. Like supposedly for Conan, he couldn't swing a
yeah,
sword because the bicep to the
yeah,
deltoid was restricting this or that. So he actually got to shrink down some more. And to think that that's Schwarzenegger in in thin mode in some
yeah,
context is quite remarkable. Again, but again,
yeah,
I think a lot of times when it comes to what makes a movie star, like having talent, like acting talent, it
yeah.
does help, but just the charisma and also the
Exactly. Yeah,
knowing
exactly.
exactly what your presence is, what you want your presence to be on screen. Which
Yeah,
again comes down to where I think Stallone sometimes finds himself to and fro in between. Well, I'm an action guy, but I'm a drama guy, and I want to be a drama guy. No, I want to be a comedian now, kind of thing like that. Where
yeah,
with Schwarzenegger, the segues he has in between, especially if we talk about comedy and such, he's playing the role the best that he can based on who he is. He doesn't want to try to be something else, which I think is something
yeah,
that's really important too.
Yeah.
And something that I think is kind of missing these days. I can't think of anyone. The only two people I can maybe think of that are kind of similar in that context, Vin Diesel, maybe The Rock, in regards to they're
Yeah.
very unique in their presence, in their size and such.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you can't move away from that. You got to work with what you have.
Yeah.
Um,
And they don't
but
speak
I
too
think
much.
no, exactly. I mean, The
Yeah.
Rock now is making a certain made certain changes into like his approach of stuff with that Smashing Machine movie and going
Yeah.
more kind of dramatic kind of road. But yeah, I just think Conan. Sorry, I just think Schwarzenegger is just what he does in this film is a movie star performance. I mean, this is like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
he's got all that stuff that he learned from Terminator, from Conan, and all that stuff, and he brought it to the
Yeah.
fore. And this is like he's actually said that one of the reasons he loved this movie, he loved John Wayne when he was a kid, and he's like, yes, this is a movie John Wayne would do, and it
Yeah.
probably is. You know, this is kind of like something like similar to
Yeah.
some of those westerns that Wayne might have done when he was
Yeah.
a Hollywood
I
leading
mean, he
man.
doesn't just carry the movie; he picks it up and just runs
Yeah.
with it. It's amazing. There's a really funny quote that he said about the movie. I'll just paraphrase it. He said that when he read the script, he thought, you know what? When I'm not killing and maiming and injuring people, I'm just a normal guy. And apparently, he came up with the idea where he chainsaws the arm off,
Oh,
and
and
they
that
weren't going to film it.
yeah,
And he got summoned to the head of the studio, and the head of the studio said, "Are you crazy? Are you effing crazy? You want this
yeah,
film to be an X?" Which is
yeah,
interesting because it did end up in the movie, but it didn't end up in the movie in my home country.
yeah. Well, Commando, it's been what, 40 years now since it's come out. Still a great movie. Still one of Schwarzenegger's best. And I'm just going to say thank you very much, Paul, for joining me today to talk about all things Commando. Everyone,
Yeah,
again, check out Money into Light. You can check out film interviews, essays, and articles from Paul
yeah,
Rowlands, and going to have everything down there uh, in the message notes, so you can check out the link for that as well. And it's been a pleasure talking today, all things Schwarzenegger and Commando, and hopefully we can talk some more classic films in the future.
yeah. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.